What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Mets Post-Game Show with myself and CP. And we finally have a win to talk about in the post-game. God bless America. Because, my God, it actually happened, Chris. It was actually a performance where it was a little shaky, but for some odd reason, I felt kind of confident that they were going to win this game. I don't know what it was. I don't know if, the bullpen pretty good. Christian Scott had a solid performance. I don't know. It just felt like, Lindor actually came alive in this game as he is highlighted in yellow in the lineup, and JD Martinez is highlighted in light baby blue. Chris, I mean, finally.
Listen, this is what you need after Francisco Lindor calls a players only meeting. And guess who stepped up to the plate literally and figuratively after his own meeting was called following yesterday's loss to the Dodgers? Francisco Lindor, highlighted in yellow, has faced scrutiny amongst Mets fans. I'm included in that, and I'll hold myself accountable because guess what? This core, like we always mention, hasn't been playing up to expectations. And Francisco Lindor stepped up when this team needed him the most, and JD Martinez provides that extra cushion. So I agree with you. I didn't get to watch the first couple of innings, but Christian Scott, again, very serviceable. Love to see the continued growth out of him because he is going to be a key part of this team for years to come. But baby steps. We're not going to get overly hyped about one win here. We need to keep stacking. There needs to be some consistency, which this team has lacked all season. But this is a good start, Rob. This is a good start.
Yep, absolutely. And look, it was what we wanted to see, accountability, right? This player only meeting was about accountability. Maybe they called each other out, which I'm assuming hasn't happened a lot in this organization, in this team, in this clubhouse. And maybe they just aired out all their dirty laundry, bitched and moaned, cursed out each other in there and saying, listen, you have to do better. I have to do better. And accountability, hopefully, is what it takes just to, open up some eyes and say, my job's on the line. My Mets career is on the line. If they really care about being a Met in Alonso, McNeil, I know Lindor and Nimmo have long-term contracts, but if they want to have a winning team, if they want a relevant 2024, they have to start like they did today. They have to get the W. They have to go. Listen, they got to win a lot of games here. They're 10 games under 500. Yes, it's a nice W. There's a long way to go, but there is actually a long way to go until the deadline. There's still about 50 games to go. So a lot can happen during that time. And I'm not saying, win off 10 straight, which would be wonderful, get back to 500. But the goal is right now, get back to 500. That was probably what they talked about. Besides the accountability factor, no postseason talk, no deadline talk. Get to 500, and then we have a conversation about the rest of the season because it's pointless if you don't get there. And what I love is that the guy who gets the most scrutiny, like you said, Francisco Lindor, he's one of the most hated Mets. And it's amazing to me because he is the second best player on this team. And right now, his stats are terrible. There's no like argument to say, oh, well, he'll come around. I don't know. I even said it in the pregame. He's been terrible. There's no way to go, no argument to say against that. But he stepped up today what we wanted to see. We wanted to see the big guys in this lineup. Yes, Alonso didn't play until late in the game, but the big guys in the lineup step up. Nimmo had a rough game today, but they have to move him from the 3-hole. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But Lindor stepped up. JD Martinez with the go-ahead home run in the 8th to win the ball game. And you know what? I want to talk about really quickly the infield in the 9th inning on those pop-ups when Nito couldn't find the ball. Vientos and Alonso took control of those pop-ups. I know it's a small situation and, they're professionals. They need to, somebody had to step up in that spot, but Nito had no idea what both of those pop-ups were. And Vientos and Alonso came in and took control. Those are not easy pop-ups If you ever played the infield before, you ever played baseball before, those are not easy, especially when your catcher has no idea where the ball is, and that was his ball. So good job by Alonso and Vientos on taking control of those two pop-ups that basically, made a little bit of a scare less scary in the ninth inning, and Reed Garrett got the save, and the Mets got the victory. But Lindor, 4-for-4 home run, 2 RBIs. JD Martinez with that big home run, and he crushed that ball. The big boys came through today. They have 9 hits. They scattered a lot of hits, but I don't know. Lindor, I know he hit the home run right-handed, but his left-handed swing looks tremendously different from even 2 weeks ago. I don't know what it is, who talked to him. I don't know if he figured it out himself, but his left-handed swing has been much, much more leveled. And I love his swing when it's leveled because he puts the bat on the ball more and none of that uppercut nonsense that he's used to left-handed. So shout out to Lindor, Martinez, and Vientos, and Alonso for the game and the defensive performances that they had in the ninth. So listen, Chris, it starts with one win. That's all you can do. You can only play today's game. And they went out there after that meeting and won the first game after, I would say, D-Day, game one. And that's what they got to do.
I want to shout out Pete Alonso, man. Honestly, we saw this team take early infield practice today, earlier than they always go out there to start the game and start their days off. I believe Tim Healy was the one who tweeted that out, and how it's unusual how early they came out there today. It's funny that they waited till May 30th to do so, but nonetheless, I digress. I'm going to keep this more so positive here. But Pete Alonso, after getting plunked in the hand, X-rays are negative, figures out that it's a bone bruise. He's out there taking early infield work with the rest of the guys. Obviously, he was a part of that Francisco Lindor players only meeting, and that is what your core players need to do, whether you're leading by your voice and your words like Lindor, or you're leading by example, getting injured, getting taken out of the ball game with a scary sort of hand situation that has plagued Alonso in the past, but getting back out there when your team needs you the most and actually getting into the game and getting a hit. Go figure. Shout out to Pete Alonso showing that sort of grittiness and that toughness as well. He's also caught a lot of flack here. And I dropped a podcast episode way earlier today on my channel talking about this core five and the statistics here early on in 2024 and how it's not pretty, and how us as Mets fans, if we want to point any fingers at anybody, it's not David Stearns, it's not Carlos Mendoza, it's not the supporting cast and Narvaez, Nito, Beatty, Vientos, etc. It is the core five. And I included, obviously, the obvious four: Jeff McNeil, Nimmo, Lindor, and Alonso, but I included also Edwin Diaz into that conversation with his 5.40 ERA and his FIP in the mid-fours. Got to hold accountability. And it seems like the players did so, at least today. And it's great to finally start a series off with a W, as opposed to all these previous series where it seems like that first game is close, but they let it slip late in the ball game. And listen, this closing role, it has to go to Reed Garrett, man. I'm sorry. I know that this is a small sample size, but he gets the job done. And even when he lets up a base runner like that leadoff walk, which I was like getting deja vu. I was like, not this again. Not the leadoff guy getting on and coming around to tie up the ball game, because we all know how dreadful the Mets are in extra innings. He induces two pop-ups and he gets the job done as well, getting that ground ball for the third out. He needs to be the one closing these ball games no matter what, because I just simply don't trust in Adam Ottavino while Edwin Diaz is hurt, let alone the fact that we really can't trust Edwin Diaz right now anyways. It needs to be Reed Garrett. And that's what I fully believe.
Yeah, Reed Garrett got the attitude. He's got that grittiness that you need from a closer. And again, he's our best option right now. And listen, we can't go to anybody else right now. Reed Garrett is the guy that feels like he can do it. How well, yet to be determined. He did well tonight. That's great. He could have easily blown up after that walk, but he bared down and got it done. So good for him. And hopefully that's good things to come for the Mets. And who was it in the chat? I kind of laughed at it. Oh, Jojo said, "What a novel idea! Practice." Allen Iverson approves. Yeah, practice. Yeah, so it's pretty. Yeah, like I said, look, it felt like today's game. I don't know if you noticed this, Chris. I mean, I know we both kind of went in and out of the game a little bit. We had the Rangers on, and we were both out and about. I actually fell asleep early in the game, but when I watched probably about 6 innings of the game in total, mostly the end of it, the the entire team looked focused on the bench. I know that's in the dugout. I feel like they were more involved while not being involved in the game. For the bench guys, the guys that are not up at that moment, um, when they're hitting, like it just felt like they were more involved. Like there was more guys cheering on the guys. Nobody bullshitting around in the dugout. Worrying about their own thing. They seemed like they were focused on the game and the 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 situation at hand. Wherever it was at, it just felt like they were more involved. Maybe that was talked about that. Enough people they were talking about that. Like, hey guys, we all got to be in this together. I see you nodding your head. What do you think about that?
No, like that is very important. And that's something that we've talked about time and time again with this lifeless dugout. The camera pans to the dugout and it seems like no one's involved in the game. You got guys sitting up on the bench. Listen, we both played baseball. It's great as a player on the field at bat, in between pitches. You take a tough pitch or whatever. It's great to hear the support from your boys in the dugout. Whereas it's crickets, right? That we're used to sort of hearing and seeing with this Mets team. So if that's what it takes for them to just rally behind each other, even the guys in the dugout, like that is important. If you've played ball ever in your life, like that sometimes can just be a boost of confidence up there, especially when you're at the plate. So I like that you brought that up. And I really hope that was an emphasis that the dugout needs to be more lively, more
Yeah.
engaged, and just supporting the boys, because that has been something that us right here talking about this team last season and the early part of this season, we're like, these guys aren't engaged, minus Francisco Alvarez. He's the one guy that consistently is engaged in the game. Everybody else, sometimes when the camera pins there, and it could just be bad luck with the camera, but I doubt it if it's multiple times that the camera pans to the dugout and it looks lifeless. Yeah, that should have been a key emphasis. So I just wanted to state the importance of that. If you've never played baseball, if you've never been part of a baseball team, this is not just baseball, right? This is just a team sport in general, right? Basketball on the bench, you hear you guys supporting you. Like, it's just like a thing within sports. So, yeah, very important. Glad to see it.
Yeah, and I talked about it in the pregame how some people in the chat were saying, "Oh, they don't have to like each other. They don't. You don't really need that nowadays. You need that type of camaraderie and chemistry. Not saying that you have to be best friends, go on double dates with you and your wives. Not talking about that, but you see these people more often than your family during the season. You know, there can't be cliques in the clubhouse, in the dugout, in on a 26-man roster. You can't have guys in different parts of the corner of the dugout and then act like you're a team through the media when everybody notices it's not true. The chemistry needs to be there a little bit more. Get behind people, and that was the first. It was so noticeable, and I wouldn't be shocked if it was talked about on SNY, behind closed doors with the cameramen, and their digital people and directors and all that, because they're there every day. They see what's going on. I wonder if it was talked about and they heard a little bit of what went on in that players meeting, and they were like, we got to pan to the dugout. Let's see if it's true what they're talking about. And it really did seem like a noticeable difference. I mean, if I noticed it watching a few innings today, it was
Right.
obvious, and you
Right.
noticed it, and then I guarantee you a lot of people, it's probably gonna be talked about on X a little bit more when more people are talking about it. But it just felt like the entire game they were in it. That's why I felt like they were gonna win this ball game. How? I mean, I'd rather win 10-0, but it just felt like they were gonna win that ball game. Regardless, the Mets, another close game, and they pulled this one out because another close game, if they start to get better in these close games, they're going to keep on winning some games here. And you know what? The Diamondbacks are struggling right now. I know the Mets are bad right now, but the Diamondbacks are not playing well. You got to take an advantage of a team that's struggling, even when you're struggling. Rock bottom was right after the Dodgers series. You did what you had to
Yeah.
do with the player meeting. You came into this Arizona game knowing that you had 4 games left in this homestand. You got to salvage it somehow, some way. Win this series. You got to take at least 3 out of 4, maybe even a sweep to maybe have a 5-5 homestand, and maybe actually have a conversation like, okay, you know what? They're playing better. They're pitching better. They're hitting better. Things are coming back together a little bit. And maybe they can go on a little bit of a run in these last 50 games before the deadline. And we can stop talking about this nonsense at the deadline on who we're trading. Is this core what we think it is or not? We both put up polls today regarding the core. Who's the problem of this team, right? The players. You had the players lined up for people to vote. I had Stearns, Cohen, and the player and the core. So it's obvious that a lot of people are talking about it. And a lot of people are turning on all the players now. Not just one or the other, it's all the players now. It would be nice if the Mets fans can actually talk about, wow, this team turned it around and these guys finally stepped up and did their job. Today, day one, they did it.
Clap it up a little bit, but that's like inducing 5 claps for me because guess what? We got to go out there and do it tomorrow. And I'm not going to be impressed until they do it maybe 4 or 5 times in a row. Now, like I'm saying, these wins, like you said, don't have to be in a row, but you know what I mean? You got to stack bunches of wins at this point because you've put yourself in so much of a hole that it's really, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's very unlikely, even still after this win, for me to see that happen. But nonetheless, like I said, it's good to see this happen. I am just going to be like, you know what? Sit there and prove me wrong. I would love for them to prove me wrong.
Yeah.
But I can't get ahead of myself. Now, I want to point out a couple things. We definitely appreciate everyone being in the chat. Keep dropping the comments, hit that thumbs up. And like you said, Rob, on both of our channels, which this is being streamed to right now, we both put up polls, which surprised me a little bit. And before we get into that, I want to shout out Junior Swingman here with a little fun fact for us. Francisco Lindor tonight is the first Met with 4+ hits in the game, which one of was at least a home run and had a stolen base since Javier Baez on September 5th, 2021. So 4 hits, one of those being a home run with a stolen base. First time that's been done by a Met since 2021. Shout out to Junior for that little fun fact. I think that's pretty interesting. And 2, just the polls that we put up, 80 votes kind of surprised me in terms of what I got as the results. And if you are watching this, whether you're subscribed to my channel or not, go to the community tab on my channel and vote in the poll if you missed out, because I asked everybody through this point in 2024, who is the most disappointing New York Met in your eyes? 80 votes in, 35% apiece, tied up are Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso. They're neck and neck. And then you have Jeff McNeil with about 18%, which I'm actually kind of shocked at. If I had to pick any one of them, I'm probably picking Jeff McNeil because just the type of player that Jeff McNeil is in order to make an impact, like in order for this Mets team to be at their peak as well, he needed to have a strong start to this season, especially just putting up a stinker in 2023 when you look at what he did in 2022 in comparison. So for me, it would have been Jeff McNeil, but it's certainly valid up and down the board, even going down to Edwin Diaz and Brandon Nimmo, who didn't make my poll. It's valid. Any one of those core 5 guys you can pick for a multitude of reasons. But I just kind of found it interesting that Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor were neck and neck in that category. But shout out to everyone who voted. Make sure you go check that out. And yeah, like I said, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Let's enjoy the win because this is a great feeling at this point. We're all kind of rejoicing, right? But I'm not sure if you want to save this for your morning stream tomorrow, but I kind of talked about it a little bit in my podcast before, dropped it around, I think 3:30 p.m. today. The Jorge Lopez situation was a tricky one that developed last night. So I don't know if you want to save it or not. It's up to you. We could talk about it if you want before we get out of here, or we could just leave it alone. Up to you.
I mean, it was a rough situation because, like, I think Jorge Lopez had all those actions and attitude. It felt like a Met fan in that jersey, right? The way everybody felt. Like, oh, Jesus, fuck it. You know, like he just felt like he just had to let out it all. And it felt like that's what a Met fan was going through. And he got a lot of heat, but don't we want the players to show emotion? I know it was probably a little bit overboard, but don't you want he was upset. and he got misquoted because his English is the second language, and that is so bad by the media, by the way. And they doubled down on it like idiots, and they look terrible, and they made him look really bad because they misquoted him because he don't speak the language very well. And he was trying to say he was a bad teammate, not is the worst team. Like, how can you misquote that? Like, there's Spanish people around. Ask somebody what it means or what he meant to say if he wanted to say it in
And where was
Spanish.
the translator in all of this as
Yeah.
well? I don't
Like,
understand that.
look,
Yeah.
I love the players that are trying to speak English, but they put their foots in the mouth on accident because they don't realize the meaning of some words when you put certain words together. And it was so unfortunate because he didn't seem like the guy that was gonna throw his team under the bus, right? He was so mad at his performance because they were really struggling. He didn't help the cause, and he felt like he hurt the team there. And you seen that emotion. We all felt that. And I felt bad for him. Did he deserve to get DFA'd?
Well,
Yeah,
regardless of what he said, whether it's team or teammate, the Mets came out after that. And the most important nugget of this all is that the reason for their DFAing of him was not because of he said that the Mets are the worst team or he's the worst teammate, whatever it was. It's not because of that. It's because he was not remorseful for actually throwing his glove out there because they have standards, according to Carlos Mendoza in his pregame press conference today, which is kind of funny to me when you look at like a Jeff McNeil. Obviously in the press conference, Jeff McNeil doesn't sort of Jeff McNeil doesn't get misquoted, first of all, but he's always has that cookie cutter sort of interview. Oh, we're a lot better than what we're playing with right now. Exactly what the media and the team wants to hear, etc. Not us fans want to hear. We don't want to hear that crap. But yeah, it was just interesting to me that and it's a great, and everyone's been saying this too. Jeff McNeil gets to throw tantrums out there and throw his bat after he makes an out, but I understand it's a little bit of a different degree because he actually threw it over the net, the glove, and it landed into his stands, etc. I understand that, but the optics nearly are the same, and Jeff McNeil does this consistently. So I'm not trying to put and compare the situations, but I am at the end of the day because the Mets explanation behind it, I don't think it was solid enough for me to warrant a DFA, but on the other hand of things, I do think he should have apologized at the very minimum
yeah,
and said that like he has some regret toward it, which I guess that was also just his fault because he doubled down on that as well. But yeah,
yeah.
no, I agree.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe the writing was on the wall, and the Mets might have really, like, again. You know what? When he got asked about it again, there needs to be a translator there. There needs to be somebody. Let him speak in Spanish in his native language, so he gets the right words out there. I guarantee you, and I said this in a pregame, if he was to do it again, like deep down inside, if you would ask him when he cools down, not the date, right? An hour after the game, ask him tomorrow if he was still a Met. I think if he had a second chance, he would have done it differently, in my opinion. I feel like a lot of these players, you know, they're hotheads, right? They obviously are. We've seen Lopez, his passion and his attitude and just the way he acts on the mound. He has a short fuse. And maybe that's what it takes to be a bullpen guy and a reliever in Major League Baseball. But I think of it like this: it's unfortunate, and talking about Jeff McNeil and throws a tantrum every single day, almost every single day, and nothing's talked about it. So that's bullshit. What Mendoza said and the organization said about standards. I'm sorry, there's no standards when you allow Jeff McNeil to be a child on the field every single day, and then Jorge Lopez, who is easily able to be DFA because of a contract. That's not the way. Like, just don't say nothing. Just say that we didn't like his. We didn't like his. You didn't have to say standards. If you wanted to DFA him, just say that we didn't like how he performed over the month of May, and that's why we decided to do it. Not about his antics on the field. If they would have
Do
said
you
that,
think?
yeah,
Do you think if he apologized though and said that he regretted it, do you think he would have been DFA'd?
I felt like he was going to be. I feel like he was. I think they had their mindset as soon as the antics on the field happened. But it's a double standard. We know that, right? If Lindor does the exact same thing, are they DFAing him? Are they trading him? Probably not. it's a situation where if you have a contract and it's too much money to get rid of you, for no reason, for free basically, and DFA you, we're not going to do it. So if Jorge Lopez was making Diaz type money, he would still be on this team. He's easily DFA'd because of his contract situation. And David Stearns, again, when you get on David Stearns' bad side, it's done. That's it. It's very simple. So, and he had a really bad May, and the Rangers just got a power play with 13 minutes to go.
Which is great.
So
I'm kind of like looking over, just like
yeah,
double attention here.
yeah.
But
I looked
also,
up, I'm like, oh, tripping. Yes.
yeah, just to
So
just to give like some people context as well before we sort of wrap up the Jorge Lopez sort of situation. It is unfortunate. He has battled some stuff in the past that we know of, right? The mental health issues that kind of came out when he was with a different organization. Believe, like, I'm not sure, I can't fact check this or not, but there's a lot of reports out there saying that his kid is also sick, something of that nature as well. So there's a lot of like external factors at play here, and these guys are human too. And at the end of the day, you have to understand that, right? And I think us as fans, we get caught up in the moment and we don't know the full story behind why a guy may react a certain way. Now, there's a certain part of the fan base and certain fans of the game that would say, regardless of what's happening in your personal life, don't bring that to work and don't let it affect you. I'm not one of those people, man. I think that's a really just tough ask, regardless of how much money these guys are getting paid. They're still humans at the end of the day.
yeah,
And it's not just Jorge Lopez. There's been other instances of this being the case around the league and with the Mets as well. And I've always erred on that side of caution to sort of not jump the gun and sort of get after the player because they reacted in the moment a certain way, right? So I do understand that. And I think that's important to sort of throw out there on this podcast as well. But nonetheless, I mean, it is what it is. You got Adam Ottavino throwing coolers in the dugout. I know that's not technically to the public eye. It's just the camera angle, just cutting into the dugout. But still, there's a million different ways you can go about this conversation. But it's unfortunate what it is. I think that he was serviceable at the very minimum, regardless of his performance in May, etc. I think he was serviceable. And I'm not sure, did he officially get DFA'd or are they waiting to like trade him sort of thing? I think he got DFA'd, right? Like,
well, when you DFA him, I think, and I think that I think you could still trade him. I think it's like a couple of days when you DFA him officially that you can be able to trade him. And Stearns probably do that for probably cash, like he did with other relievers. But yeah, if either one of those things are true about, well, we know about his mental health, but with the mental health, and if it's true that his kid is sick too and is looking for a donor, if I'm the Mets, why don't you put him on like some type of list, like a exempt list or something like that, or put him in the minors to cool off his head and make sure he gets the help he needs. And maybe the Mets are doing it behind the scenes. You never know. They might be trying to
we
help.
don't know. Yeah.
So I don't want to call out the Mets in that situation, but if they're just doing it because of a business purpose, and I understand it's a business, I hope they're taking care of the player, because you don't want him to do anything stupid outside of baseball to hurt himself, and in that case would hurt his family in that case. So hopefully his mental health's okay and his child gets the best care he actually needs, regardless of how much money he's making. You still need a donor. I don't care how much money you have. It's America. It's hard to find that stuff. So I understand what he could be going through. And maybe it was just a combination of everything. Him performing bad, his family situation, and his mental health just all came together in one day. But it also felt like, and I wanted to bring this up because I brought it up in the pregame, Pete Alonso and his comments about Lopez. And he had a very terrible answer. I don't know what to think about that. I felt like that
And
showed
see
a
it.
lot.
What was it?
So they asked him, what are your thoughts about Lopez and his antics on the field? And Pete Alonso was Pete Alonso in his answer where he's like, and then he was like, I don't know what to think about that. And he said that multiple times. Like he was trying to say something else, but he had nothing else. It sounded really bad. It sounded like a lack of leadership. And a lot of people agree with me in the chat at the time. Like, I don't know if you want to pull it up later on and listen to it. It's like a 30-second clip. it just sounded really bad, especially with a team that feels like they don't trust each other and don't have each other's back. It felt like he didn't have Lopez's back, and he was still his teammate, at least a day ago. So it really did sound bad. But and it just shows the lack of leadership that's on this team. Now, again, that might mean nothing. Maybe Pete Alonso spoke to him to the side, and he really didn't have nothing to say about that. But it just the optics looked really bad. And
Yeah.
for a guy that I think for Pete Alonso, who seemingly seems like a good guy, it was very odd to have that type of answer through the media about a question that easily could have been said. You know what? He's my teammate. I got his back. It was a rough game for him, and he got his emotions got the best of him. If he would have said that, that's a great answer. I don't know why he didn't say that, but it was just an odd answer. It was bad optics.
Yeah, that is pretty odd, or even that, or he could have said something to the effect of what Francisco Lindor said, because I think in a snippet that I saw, if I remember correctly, Francisco Lindor after Lopez, and I think he figured out that Lopez didn't apologize for it. Francisco Lindor said something to the effect of, "I hope he comes back tomorrow and just thinks differently of that," and something like that, right? Like say something at least. But I don't know. I agree with you. It's tough, man. Like you said, like with the whole situation in general about Jorge Lopez's personal life and just what goes on in the clubhouse, right? It's always hard to speculate what happens behind closed doors, but all we can really assess is what gets out to the public and what the media sort of makes of it. So, no, I agree with you for sure.
Yeah, so it is what it is. But we're gonna finish this stream up and this post game up, so me and Chris can bite out nails in the last 10 minutes of a Ranger game in Game 5. Mets win 3-2. Lindor 4 for 4, home run, 2 RBIs. JD Martinez with a huge home run, dead center. Get the go ahead home run, and Reed Garrett gets the save. Chris, give me your final thoughts and what you got going on with the channel.
Final thoughts is that Florida just took the lead right now with the goal 2-1, which sucks. But no, final thoughts is that this is just the beginning of what we can hope out of the New York Mets moving forward. And yes, Rob, I see your facial expression. I'm live for this Rangers on the post game, whether they win or lose. So that's very tough for me to watch. And if you're a Rangers fan, come rock with us in about an hour on the channel and we'll talk about it. But no, this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's nice to see a win. Francisco Lindor backing up his words at the players only meeting. JD Martinez having a grand statement here. Really first time it feels like JD Martinez put his stamp on a game. Like, I'm not saying he hasn't had any success for the Mets and with the Mets here early, but this is like, okay, this is my time to shine. I'm going to put my signature move on this game, and I'm just going to take a ball to deep center field, dead center field, and win us a ball game here. So great to see that. Hopefully, like I said, this is the tip of the iceberg. Consistency is important. If they come out and play a sloppy game tomorrow, guess what? Whatever we said on here goes out the window, really, right? I mean, they have minimal room for error. We're talking about needing to win 3 or 4 or even just sweeping the damn series. There is no room for error. So come out, do it again tomorrow, and hopefully the main guys, hopefully Francisco Lindor, this is the time where he picks it up, right? We all know he's a slow first half player. Hopefully what happened before, bygones are bygones, with the first month and a half, 2 months of the season, starting here in late May, going on early June. Hopefully it's a different Francisco Lindor, and hopefully Brandon Nimmo and Mr. McNeil down there, who took the 0 for 4 with the K, follow in his footsteps. Like I said, podcast dropped on my channel around 3:30, just talking about the state of the Mets, a little bit more of my thoughts and opinions on the Jorge Lopez situation, as well as the core five and some early statistics behind the struggles of the core five. Make sure to go check that out. And like I said, the poll in the community tab on my channel as well. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff, because this is being streamed to my channel as well. Approaching 800 subscribers on the channel. I definitely appreciate it. And like I said, it's always let's go Mets, whether it's win or lose. Let's just hope it's more winning here than losing.
Absolutely. So make sure you hit that subscribe button for Chris. Get him to 800, guys. New York Mets 25-33 got a victory. They got to continue it tomorrow. Keep the momentum going. Lindor, the big boys, hopefully Nimmo and McNeil get it together and pick it up. If we get 2 out of the 4, get hot at the right time. I think this team's really going to take off because everything else has been pretty decent. The starting pitching, you've been getting so many good outings. They got to keep it going. So Mets post game, another one in the books. We actually get to talk about a win. Hopefully, we get to talk about more wins over the next couple of days. And when we get to the roundtable, it's not as terrible homestand as we thought it was going to be. So tomorrow, guys, 10 a.m. Mets Talk Live on my channel. I'm still working on a guest. A lot of people are working, obviously. But if I don't get a guest, you'll have my big ass face on there for about an hour talking Mets in the morning for everybody. So with that said, guys, 3-2 Mets. Nice performance for Lindor and Martinez. With that said, have a great night, guys. Let's go Mets and Rangers. Please don't lose this game. Let's try to tie this game, and who knows, it'll probably be another freaking overtime game. Chris, have a great night. Mets fans, have a great night. We'll see you next time. Let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.